Chapter 5, Jonathan Harker's Journal continued. September 6th. The dawn's first light crept over the Transylvanian hills, casting a golden hue over the eerie landscape. The castle, perched precariously atop the craggy heights, seemed to shimmer with a malevolent glow. I had scarcely slept, my dreams filled with the shadowy figures that had haunted me since my arrival. The strange events of the past few days weighed heavily upon me, and the enigma of Count Dracula's character grew ever more perplexing. The Count had been unusually agitated this morning, his face a mask of grim determination. He spoke little, and when he did, it was in terse, clipped tones that suggested his mind was preoccupied with pressing matters. He instructed me to prepare for a journey, a command that I dutifully obeyed, though the nature and destination of this journey remained a mystery. As I made my way through the castle's labyrinthine corridors, I couldn't help but marvel at the stark contrast between the Count's previous demeanor and his current state. There was a coldness about him today, an edge to his movements that was both unsettling and intriguing. I tried to glean some understanding from his demeanor, but he was as inscrutable as ever. The castle itself seemed to hold its breath, a silence so profound that it felt almost oppressive. The vast, empty halls echoed with the distant clatter of my footsteps, and the oppressive weight of the Count's looming presence seemed to cast a shadow over every corner. My thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of the Count, who beckoned me to follow. We traversed a series of narrow, winding passages, each more disorienting than the last. The walls seemed to close in around us, and the dim light from the flickering torches barely illuminated our path. It was as though we were moving through the very bowels of the earth, the oppressive darkness a tangible force. Eventually, we emerged into a small, secluded courtyard. The Count's demeanor changed once more, his face softening into a look of grim satisfaction. He gestured for me to sit upon a stone bench, and I complied, though my curiosity and apprehension were growing by the minute. With a flick of his hand, the Count summoned a servant who presented us with a modest but hearty meal. I ate ravenously, the hunger gnawing at me, though my mind remained focused on the events to come. The Count observed me with a thoughtful expression, his eyes dark and inscrutable. After the meal, we resumed our journey. The Count led me to a secluded carriage, which awaited us in a small, hidden courtyard. The carriage was an imposing, dark-colored vehicle, its design reminiscent of a bygone era. The horses that drew it were large and powerful, their coats gleaming in the fading light. As we traveled, the Count remained silent, his gaze fixed on the landscape passing by. I attempted to engage him in conversation, but he merely nodded or responded with curt, vague answers. The journey seemed interminable, the landscape shifting from rolling hills to dense, foreboding forests. As dusk fell, we arrived at a remote village. The inhabitants, upon seeing the Count, offered him a mixture of reverence and fear. They greeted him with a solemn respect that bordered on the obsequious, and their eyes betrayed a deep-seated unease. The Count seemed to take no notice of their trepidation, his focus fixed on the business at hand. We disembarked from the carriage and proceeded to a small, dilapidated inn. The innkeeper, a gaunt man with a wary expression, ushered us inside. The interior of the inn was modest and uninviting, but it provided a welcome respite from the oppressive atmosphere of the journey. The Count requested a private room, and the innkeeper led us to a small, dimly lit chamber. Once inside, the Count turned to me with a steely gaze. "You will remain here until morning," he instructed. "There are matters I must attend to that are best dealt with alone." I acquiesced, though the tension in the air was palpable. The Count's words hinted at a deeper mystery, one that I was not yet privy to. As he left the inn, I was left alone with my thoughts, the oppressive silence of the room echoing the uncertainty that plagued my mind. The hours passed slowly, each minute stretching into what felt like an eternity. I tried to occupy myself with reading, but the unease that gripped me made it impossible to concentrate. My thoughts kept returning to the Count's strange behavior and the sense of foreboding that seemed to envelop everything. Just after midnight, a commotion erupted outside the inn. The sound of raised voices and hurried footsteps pierced the silence, and I could make out the vague shape of several figures moving about. Driven by curiosity and apprehension, I peered through the window but could see nothing clearly. The disturbance subsided as quickly as it had begun, and an eerie calm settled over the village. I was left to ponder the events of the evening and the true nature of the Count's activities. There was something undeniably sinister about the entire situation, and I could not shake the feeling that I was on the cusp of uncovering a dark and unsettling truth. As the night wore on, I found myself unable to sleep. The weight of the Count's secrecy and the strange occurrences that surrounded me pressed heavily upon my mind. The journey we had undertaken, the unsettling interactions with the villagers, and the enigmatic nature of the Count all conspired to create an atmosphere of pervasive dread. I resolved to remain vigilant and alert, prepared for whatever might come next. The events of the day had only deepened the mystery, and I could not shake the sense that I was being drawn into a web of intrigue and danger. As the first light of dawn began to break, I steeled myself for whatever lay ahead, knowing that the answers I sought might reveal a truth far darker than I could have ever imagined.